Do you want to tackle question
yeah,
one?
the first video, 100% of my videos are made by me. I found that by the time I go looking for something, I could have just made it myself and it would have been exactly what I wanted. But I know a lot of people do use, like if you're a math teacher, there are some amazing math teachers who put all their stuff up, and you could even start with like Khan Academy if you really wanted to, until you're used to getting rolling with the program and then change it up. I would say ideally you would make the best videos for your kids. Like Sam said, you're responding to their needs immediately, and you have that ability as you make your own video.
Yeah, I make all my own. When allowing students to access to editing a live document like this for back channel purposes, how do you moderate appropriateness, e.g. Karl is hot? Holla. That's what it says.
I figured. There's a couple of ways. One is to only give them commenting access, which has been helpful for me at times. One is just teach them how to use the tool. My students, whenever I do collaborative documents, the first time I give them 20 minutes to just play around with it, because they're going to erase each other's names and put nicknames for people. If you give them the chance to play with that and so they know all the features, then at least it generally works out pretty well afterwards. The other thing is that if they're all signed in and not just anonymous viewer, that helps a lot because revision history can take you back to whoever's doing whatever, and you can find.
And all you got to do is show them that revision history once. Oh man, she's
yes.
And for me, one of the big things has just been assuming positive intent. Is I'm going to trust that you will use the tool right. We will have conversations about what appropriate use looks like, so you know my expectations. And if you write Karl is hot in the document, and I know it's you, we'll talk about that. Yeah. But just assuming positive intent around that has been really effective for me. If you trust kids to make the right decision, and you told them what the right decision looks like, I've been really happy to see that you get the right decision.
It's the same thing with bring your own device. Like I think both Karl and I say this to kids, that if I see you using your phone, I'm going to assume it's for educational purposes. And if it's not, and you prove me wrong, we'll have to deal with that. But I'm going to just assume that you're a responsible adult that can manage your own technology, same as I would.
One other question, are there issues with using copyrighted materials in your screencasts? I try my best, and it's hard for history to use Creative Commons images. I don't do a good enough job with that.
I don't either.
I am hoping that hiding behind I'm using it for educational purposes will help. I mean, I'm not re-splicing illegally uploaded YouTube clips of movies and having kids watch those. I mean, I'm sure that I'm in a gray area, and I hope I'm not on the wrong side of the law with using images that I'm able to find if I can't find something on Creative Commons. I do my best to model good digital citizenship practices.
And I do a less good job.
I'm not saying I do a good job, I say I try hard to do a good job.
Well, so I make the videos of me reading all the books that we have because a lot of my kids wouldn't read the book if they had to read it themselves, but if they listen to it, they do a really good job, or we want to listen to it in class. And so because I only use it for my classroom and there's always class sets of whatever books I choose, I just assume that would be okay. And I know I've been told that it would not be okay if I was using them in any other way. So. What we want to make sure we say, though, is that flipped learning is great in a lot of ways, but it is not these things. First, it's not all about, as much as we've talked about technology and video, we both think that it's possible to flip your class with no video whatsoever. Because flipping doesn't have to be about the technology. It's about changing your face-to-face time so that you get the most out of it and you're able to do the most high-impact activities while you are all together as a class. And if that involves technology and it involves video, great. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. It also isn't just bad pedagogy, like taking lecture and putting on video. Like bad lecture on video is still bad lecture. It doesn't improve it, yes. Same thing with homework. Like we both don't give homework, but that's, again, you don't have to flip your class. It's also not a magic wand, and it's not the end point. Like if you stop at, my kids watch videos at home and we do the homework in class, that's not where you should be stopping. You should keep going into how do I get the most out of my students and help them take responsibility for their learning and their own education. And so my students drive a lot of the content, they drive a lot of the process, they drive the assessment, and they get a lot more out of that than me driving the whole process.
When you say that you let the students drive the content, what's an example of that?
So,
how do you pick up, I mean, are there certain things you need to teach others?
There's skills that I need to teach. And so like if we're doing an essay, I often will give them the choice of like, either here's a bunch of topics I thought of, or to come up with your own. Or like the last book, I gave them a choice between Slaughterhouse-Five and Looking for Alaska, and then they all voted as a class for which one they wanted to do. So sometimes it's a simple like this or that choice. Sometimes it's we need a rubric. What do you guys think is important that we assess from this project? Just depends.
Prior to the project happening or after, or in the middle? Or
You know, my students said to me, we should do this beforehand next time. And I didn't purposefully because I wanted to see how they would do like through the process without any kind of major guidelines. But we did a rubric for their video project as we were about to start watching them in class and kind of agreed on it. And they were really great. They agreed on exactly what I would have put on as a rubric for what they thought was important. And finally, I mean, the reason that we're both standing up here presenting this together is that you can't flip by yourself. It's so hard to do all of this on your own. That I have a collaborative partner that we do pretty much everything together. I work with a small group of people for the Flipped Learning Journal, flippedlearningjournal.org. It's on the next slide, I think. That we put together kind of a repository of this is what it looks like to flip your class in these various subjects. And we all work together really closely. And if I have a question, I don't walk next door to my colleagues. I get on Twitter and ask Carl or ask Andrew or Sam or someone else because I know they understand my classroom incredibly well because we've had so many of these like big conversations that are important.
Are there any like studies that you know of that are evaluating flipped learning as?
Yes, Carl.
Pressure on
There's
me.
a ton right now that are going on. A lot of like PhD level research is happening. There aren't many that have finished. I know that there's some from like in college. Eric Mazur, right, the physics professor, has done some like longitudinal studies over the last 10 years of when he flipped his, he calls it something different, but when he moved direct instruction out of his lessons, he saw a higher level of engagement. And
Right.
so he's one, Eric Mazur, M-A-Z-U-R. And Carl probably can give you other
Oh
ones.
man, it just came out. It was like these are 3 ongoing studies of flipped learning, and I was
Yeah.
like, that looks interesting.
Was
And
it
they
on
weren't.
Bergman's blog?
Yeah.
I think it's one of the last blog posts on Bergman,
I don't know. We're working.
which leads us to resources too.
Oh, here we go.
So we run Flipped Learning Journal. The Flipped Classroom Ning is huge and it's kind of hard to manage and there's not a ton of people on there. If you really want something that's really powerful, I would say get on Twitter because Twitter has the most amazing, innovative educators anywhere in the world right now. And then, of course, because Carl's presenting, there has to be a Ramsey shout out on there. Explore, Flip, Apply is something that we both use. It's a way of designing lessons that starts with inquiry and then gives instruction, and then the kids use that to apply in various skills. And then Crystal Kirch, the Whisk Queen, with watch summary questions at the end. Yeah.
Is this similar to blended learning, or is it too different?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I think the thing with terminology is that it shifts so much, and like if you watched my classroom, you might not say immediately, oh, that's flipped. If you watched Carl's, you probably would because it looks a little bit more like what flipped learning looks like. My class is sometimes like we're all doing the same thing at the same time. But I'd say every flipped class is different. And so some use the language of blended learning, some use the language of like inquiry driven. I don't know, there's lots and lots of titles you can put on it, but really it's about doing what's best for the kids in the room and whatever that looks like.
I can't find the link about studies about it.
If you find it, you can tweet it later,
I'll do that.
when you find it.
And I don't remember who asked the question, and I don't want to sound confrontational in answering it. For me, the skills that I want the kid, that's the whole content skills. This stuff that you're measuring with the tests that I think are dumb, I don't care about those. I'm lucky to be at a school where I can say that, and I mean, like I do enough, and I'm guided by the California state standards that yes, you will be okay here. I also teach history, which doesn't matter. So if my scores are low, it's not like I'm Cheryl
terms of testing.
or a math teacher. But I mean, English and math are disproportionately represented
right.
in how your school is evaluated. So for me, teaching history allows me a little bit of that freedom. But it's not that I think that the studies around flipped classrooms aren't important, but like if you can find a way to measure engagement in kids wanting to be in my classroom and learning the soft skills that aren't tested by standardized testing, I'm way more interested in those studies than I am of these,
Yeah.
cross-sectional studies of how did kids do on the 10th grade world history star scores.
Right, just financially, that's why I'm asking. I agree with you, I'm just saying it's a lot easier to go to my principal and say, I
Totally.
need these tools,
Yeah.
and here's evidence.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, I think this is definitely amazing.
And we were lucky. I mean, my admin, when I said I wanted to flip, was like, awesome, what do you need from me? What,
Yeah.
you want a card and netbooks? Great, have them, go 1-to-1.
Right.
Like, they were great with that. This year, it's been a little bit more challenging because they didn't really understand what I moved schools, and it was harder for them to get their heads around what I was trying to do. But I think once they see it working for kids, people are willing to just go with you. I mean,
Yeah.
we're the professionals, you know your kids best, and
Yeah.
often it just takes I'm just gonna dive in and then I'll tell you about it when it's going really well.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Any other questions that we didn't get to? Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, is there a history class, social studies class, do you use the textbook, and how is that used with students among your other resources that you use with them?
It's an option for me, I'm a huge Sam Weinberg disciple, of the education professor at Stanford, and he talks about getting the kids to do the work of historians, and that's what history class should look like, and I completely agree with him. It's getting kids into the gray area. So I will use video or a textbook or an online resource to get that lower bloom, so they have just enough context to do the manipulation and wrapping your head around the more convoluted aspects of a unit, and make real historical judgments out of that upper level bloom stuff. So textbook is one resource for that. There's also some pedagogical things where you use the textbook, and I just did one Friday about the Armenian genocide, which is called the Armenian Massacre in my textbook, and is wildly underrepresented in terms of the number of deaths. And so I also use it as hey, let's use the textbook as a source, not the source. So kind of opening it up for its flaws.
And then we just have a load of, you can tell that we use Twitter a lot. These are just some great people to follow, including Sam is in the room right there. You should follow him. And this is my collaborative partner who's also a genius, and you should follow him too. But just getting you on Twitter, finding some good people. These are people who tend to tweet quite a bit so that you can follow them and get a lot of information. And honestly, the best thing you could possibly do is start going to the Flip Class chats, even if it's just to watch at first. If you're not big on Twitter, just watch the hashtag. You can go to tweetchat.com and it'll just sort by the Flip Class hashtag at 5 o'clock on Monday nights, Pacific time. And generally I moderate, or Bennett Science moderates, and you can just kind of listen to the conversation. You don't even have to get involved if you don't want to. There's great people talking. That's fine. So I think that's almost done.
That brings us to
So we have a feedback Google form for you that we'd love for you to fill out, that you can get to at that link if you're in the presentation, or the link there, or the QR code, whatever is more convenient for you. Yes.
Can you show us some of the conversation that happened a few days ago in that Twitter?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you can see a lot of it is around what we were talking about here.
Yeah, we've been polluting that hashtag all morning.
I teach 9th grade.
And
Yeah.
Joanne's been on from San Diego.
These are almost all California people. Yeah.
So wait, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
So I'm just sort of stunned because I have no idea what Twitter is. So I've
Yes.
access to the previous generation. And it looked like some of these earlier comments that was at the top of the screen were talking about what was going on right here.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that. So what is Twitter? Is it something you could say in
Okay,
one sentence?
yeah, so imagine Twitter is a giant, like, gymnasium. And in that gymnasium, there's different little, like, mini rooms that people are participating in. And the way you find that room is you find the hashtag. So the Flip Class hashtag, anyone can use it, and it's devoted specifically to flipped learning. Yeah, the pound sign. And when you search by that hashtag, you get only the people who are talking in that conversation. So anytime it's at, and this is me actually, anytime it's at is a person, so you can see this tweet particularly is going to 3-4 people with 2 different hashtags. This is the one for this event right here, and this is the one for Flipped Class. And essentially, it's just a way of finding people who are talking about what you want to talk about. Does that make sense?
It's a little bit like back in my day, there's something called IRC.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the hashtag would be equivalent to a room.
Okay.
yeah. And it can be very overwhelming and confusing, which is why we can also show you like more one-on-one afterwards if you want to see and get on Twitter. I'd be happy to do a little.
Then people tweet and use stupid hashtags that don't make. Oh wait,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, hashtag shenanigans. Yeah, any other questions? It's actually late letting you go.
If you fill out that Google form, you